You might know the artist Louise Bourgeois for her giant metal spiders, and while they might not be everyone's cup of tea, she still holds the record for the most expensive sculpture ever to be sold at auction by a woman at $28 million. And now more of her work is back on the auction block at Sotheby's in London, along with another female artist, Yayoi Kusama. Belle Upton went along to find out what's up for grabs.
Two of the greatest female artists of the 20th century. Their work shown side by side. Sotheby's in London has brought together Louise Bourgeois and Yayoi Kusama. The idea behind this show is to throw a spotlight on the sometimes very visual parallels between the two artists' work. It's not the first time it's been done. A show in New York back in 2001 brought the two artists together, but this time the focus isn't on the physical aspects of their work, but rather on the psychological trauma at the heart of it. Both artists were émigrés, Bourgeois from France, Kusama from Japan, living in New York during the 1950s and 60s. They're best known for their explorations of interior life and the psychological trauma of childhood. For Bourgeois, anger at her philandering father provided the inspiration for her rebellion against paternal order. Her spider is an ambivalent comment on motherhood. Kusama, too, had a difficult relationship with a womanizing father. She responds by confronting female stereotypes. Much of her work is based on finding ways to express the visions she had as part of a psychological condition called hallucinosis. In 1977, Kusama checked herself into a mental hospital in Japan, where she still lives. For both artists, their practice is a kind of therapy.
Both artists were heavily productive during the 1950s, the 1960s. So at the same time as the burgeoning minimalist dialogue was going on, as well as sort of the early emigrant surrealists that came to New York in the 1930s as well, and then abstract expressionism, they were active during these very dominant art historical discourses and very male-dominated art historical narratives. So it's really interesting that it wasn't until the 1980s with the second wave feminist movement that both really began to acquire the critical attention that they truly do deserve.
Now 87 years old, Kusama is still producing in her studio in Japan. Bourgeois died in 2010, but her legacy lives on. Half of the works on show here will go on sale next week, fittingly on International Women's Day. Belle Upton, TRT World, London.
As we just heard, Yayoi Kusama is still producing artwork today. Mayo Yoshida went to find out what inspires her creations at a major exhibition of her work that kicked off in Tokyo this week.
Colorful pumpkins, polka dots, and more polka dots. The psychedelic world created by artist Yayoi Kusama is featured in a retrospective at Tokyo's National Art Center. The exhibition gathers 270 pieces, from Kusama's early childhood drawings to her latest project called My Eternal Soul. It consists of 130 paintings she's been working on since 2009. Also a highlight is this dazzling mirrored room, a popular selfie spot.
The last time a major exhibition of Yayoi Kusama was held in Tokyo was 13 years ago. I have never heard of one of her solo exhibitions being as big as this one.
The artist, now 87, is still as vigorously productive as when she first made a name for herself in New York's contemporary art scene in the 50s.
Fighting is endless. I still would like to create more unique works. Only by thinking about it, I do have sleepless nights.
Kusama is described as Japan's most successful living artist, but her life hasn't always been rosy. She struggled with mental illness, but she's also used it as an inspiration for her avant-garde art pieces. Kusama began painting polka dots and mesh patterns from the age of 10, when she began suffering hallucinations. But art was her way to control her anxiety and fears. Photos of the exhibition started flooding social media feeds from the day the exhibit opened, and more visitors are expected to capture the moment until it wraps up in May. Mai Yoshida, TRT World, Tokyo.
Joining me now is arts and culture writer at the Huffington Post, Priscilla Frank. Priscilla, thanks for joining us. This latest exhibition is also a bit of a social experiment on being alone. Tell us more.
Yeah, the exhibition that's traveling that just opened at the Hirshhorn, it features 6 of Kusama's infinity rooms, which are these enclosed spaces inside the museum that are meant to be entered alone, and you experience them for a minute, and all of the walls are mirrored, so it's this very strange experience. And then each one also has different sculptural elements like polka dots or twinkly lights or pumpkins. And everything is reflected back and forth off of each other to create the illusion of being in this infinite space that you are not only in, but you are also a part of it.
And I read somewhere that the idea is that you have to book a space, you get 45 seconds in the room and you go in alone. So it's kind of, you know, in a day where we're all connected all the time, I think it's kind of cool that you would be just on your own for 45 seconds, or forced to be at least.
Yeah, it's an interesting combination because a lot of what's talked about in reference to the show is this really strong desire when you're in this space that you've waited so long for, that is so surreal, is to take a photo of yourself in it and then upload it onto the internet. So it is this strange combination of both being in this space by yourself and then also having the urge to document it, share it, have it spread across the internet, and to have it connect with infinite space in that way as well.
I mean, it just shows how much Kusama has been able to evolve, like 70 years of evolution, and she's still relevant today.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. Since she started working in the mid-50s, she has really stuck to this one simple concept of trying to visualize infinity and through these simple repetitive acts lose sort of the boundaries of herself, and that's what she invites her viewers to do as well, is to get lost in her spaces until you sort of forget who you are, where you are, and just are one with infinity.
And I mean, she is in her 80s, she's not going to be around forever. What do you think her legacy will be?
Well, she's been called the most famous living artist. She is, on aggregate, the most expensive female living artist. And she has, throughout her life, been very open about using art as a way to deal with her mental health issues. She started creating art when she was experiencing hallucinations at 6 years old, and she's said many times that art has saved her life. And there's still so much stigma surrounding mental health, and especially for women. And I think that she's just a real example of how you can turn pain into beauty, whether it's through art or through any other mode of expression.
Priscilla Frank, thanks for joining us on Showcase today.